The last 2 weeks, we have seen possibly the greatest threat to freedom in the last 100 years. One man mimicking the actions of the tyrant dictators of the past, imposing his will on people that have no desire to allow their freedoms to be diminished.
Back now on Newsy Tonight, I'm Chance Heels. Truckers protesting Canada's nationwide vaccine mandate have shut down its capital city and cross-border trade for 2 weeks.
Police have failed to clear a major bridge crossing between the US and Canada.
Tamara Leach and Pat King have been two of the leading organizers and ideological beacons for the trucker protest in Ottawa.
A series of protests and blockades in Canada against COVID-19 vaccine mandates and restrictions called the Freedom Convoy began in early 2022. February the 14th, Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act. It was the first time it was used since the act was passed in 1988. Now, the Emergencies Act is a statute passed by the Parliament of Canada which authorises the federal government to take extraordinary temporary measures to respond to public welfare emergencies, public order emergencies, international emergencies, and war emergencies. Now, the law replaces the War Measures Act passed in 1914, asserts that any government action continues to be subject to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In 1988, the Emergencies Act replaced and repealed the War Measures Act. But why? The October crisis started in October 1970, when members of the FLQ kidnapped the provincial deputy premier, Pierre Laporte, and the British diplomat James Cross from his Montreal residence. The War Measures Act limited civil liberties and granted the police far-reaching powers, prompting questions at the time from CBS. This allowed them to arrest and detain 497 people, eventually ending the crisis. The act was questioned for its suspension of civil liberties and personal freedoms, and was therefore replaced with the Emergency Act. At this point in time, it was the first occasion a Canadian leader had flagrantly disregarded civil liberties to exercise control and power. The name of this man is Pierre Trudeau.
Well, there's a lot of bleeding hearts around who just don't like to see people with helmets and guns. All I can say is go on and bleed, but it's more important to keep law and order in this society than to be worried about weak-kneed people who don't like the looks of a
at any cost? At any cost? How far would you go with that? How far would you extend that?
Just watch me.
Since the replacement of the War Measures Act, the Emergency Act has not needed to be used once, but has, in the past month, been called into effect by the son of the only other man to call such measures into effect. When they say the apple didn't fall far from the tree, with as heavy hands as Daddy, little Justin decided to enact the Emergency Act while seemingly ignoring the Canadian Charter of Rights, of whose inclusion seems to be the driving factor in replacing the War Measures Act. Now, with specific sections seemingly in contention with Justin's actions, I noted the following. Section 2 lists what the Charter calls fundamental freedoms, namely freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, of thought, of belief, of expression, of press, of other media communication, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. But these truckers aren't free to peacefully assemble in protest. Section 7, right to life, liberty, security of the person. Well, their financial security is certainly threatened by the fact that their accounts are being frozen. Section 8, freedom from unreasonable search and seizure. Well, in my mind, this is seizure of funds, but I'm not sure legally if that is correct. So, Section 9, freedom from arbitrary detention or imprisonment. If it's not illegal to peacefully protest, then why were 191 arrested? That sounds like an arbitrary decision of some person to me. Section 15, equal treatment before and under law and equal protection and benefit of the law without discrimination. Those who want to be unvaccinated and protest peacefully being tear gassed and arrested doesn't really seem like equality to me, as essentially they're doubly discriminating. First time for not having a vaccine in the first place, and the second time for not being able to assemble to peacefully protest. But yeah, so shady, dodgy stuff going on in Canada, or not? What do you think? Is this a conspiracy, or is it just the first stone? It's about to drop. You tell me in the comments down below. Let's get a conversation started.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and he's evoking the Emergencies Act to block crypto wallets linked to protesting truckers. Any update on that?
Good morning. Yesterday we FinTrack, that is Canada's one of Canada's international money laundering agencies, put 34 different crypto addresses, including 29 Bitcoin addresses, onto a sanctions list, basically ordering financial institutions not to interact with these addresses, and seemingly trying to freeze these funds that have been donated to Canadian truckers, which under the Emergencies Act appears to kind of designate these truckers as, don't quote me, but I think involved in not just illicit activity but possibly terroristic activity, which has set a lot of folks on Twitter aflame.
And at the same time, the U.S. Senate is considering a bill that could possibly look into El Salvador's Bitcoin law. And I wonder, could you clarify, because there seems to be some confusion, or at least the way how the media is telling it and what the bill actually says.
Yeah, so this was an interesting bill by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and the bill itself is actually really interesting, I think. It's basically calling on the Treasury Department to conduct a study into El Salvador's Bitcoin law, and it wants the Treasury Department to look at not just the law itself and how it was created, but also how it's being implemented, how it's being used. And so it's asking questions like, what is the internet penetration in El Salvador? What is the percentage of the population that's able to actually take advantage of this? So it's not just saying, okay, well, Bitcoin's bad and El Salvador's whatever. It's saying, here's some I have no idea. I haven't heard anything yet about this dollar, which is, of course, another question that is being asked.
The Ontario Superior Court of Justice asked a self-custody wallet provider, Nunchuck, to disclose user information and freeze users' Bitcoin as part of all the crackdowns in Canada. But here was the team's response, which is absolutely epic. Dear the Ontario Superior Court of Justice, Nunchuck is a self-custodial, collaborative, multi-sig Bitcoin wallet. We are a software provider, not a custodial financial intermediary. Our software is free to use. It allows people to eliminate single points of failure and store Bitcoin in the safest way possible while preserving privacy. We do not collect any user identification information beyond email addresses. We also do not hold any keys. Therefore, we cannot freeze our users' assets. We cannot prevent them from being moved. We do not have knowledge of the existence, nature, value, and location of our users' assets. This is by design. Please look up how self-custody and private keys work. When the Canadian dollar becomes worthless, we will be here to serve you too. Sincerely, the Nunchuck team. This is absolutely epic. Not only do they explain that their technology